What is up? This is the Nook Podcast. My name is Steven, and we are in that lull between Christmas and New Year's Day. That odd week when it feels like all of the Christmas stuff has been up too long, but we're all too tired to start putting any of it away. This is also the most concentrated time for looking back over the year and reminiscing, which is why I have taken all of the Mondays this month to post some of the most unexpected moments from this year's podcast episodes. And I will get to today's moment in just a moment. See what I did there? This little podcast is just a few weeks from her first birthday. I have learned so much in the last 12 months getting this off the ground, and I would love to know what you think about this first lap. Would you please drop me an email? The address is steven@nookpodcast.com. That's Steven with a V at nookpodcast.com. That address is always in the show notes, along with a link to Buy Me a Coffee, which is just a super simple and secure way for you to contribute financially to this podcast. Now, for this last unexpected moment, we jog all the way back to May of 2021 when I had the pleasure of talking with Andrea Robinson. That name is probably quite familiar to my friends in Arizona, as Andrea was a morning anchor person on Fox 10 in Phoenix. After nearly 15 years on that station, she came to a point where she knew that it was time to move on. This was just one of the many moments that I had this year when my guest chose to open up and share from some of the rough seasons in their life. And the episodes were so much richer because of it, and I am so grateful for that. Even when Andrea had no idea what she would do next, she knew that God would guide her through it all. Well, after that long stint, all those years, what started to shift for you to where you, whether you knew in part or in whole, that it might be time to move on?
You know, I think I never anticipated this shift inside of me to happen. I remember when I started this job, I started as an intern. I started in a way that really no one starts in this business as an intern and then gets a job in Phoenix. And it was a very unglamorous way to start because it wasn't like I, started as an intern and became, the co-host of the show. There was quite a good stretch of years in between. And here we ended up in 2017 really was the year that I felt like this whole shift inside of me. My kids were getting older. And I really, felt like I was missing out on a lot of things with them because I was this tired, exhausted version of myself. I was, wishing for Friday often, which wasn't like me. It really never was. All the years that I worked there, it wasn't that I was praying for a weekend to come, but I was exhausted, and not just exhausted from lack of sleep. I was like exhausted inside, like my soul was tired. And I would lay there and at night and Sunday night, sometimes I would just cry because I didn't want to go to work the next day. I'm like, this isn't me. And I felt tension there. Things that were once easier were not. The schedule became extremely taxing for me. I'd sit at work and I would literally some days count down the hours because I just wanted to get home and get on with the things that I felt mattered more.
Right.
I would be sad when I'd miss out on games, late night games with the kids and so forth. And so I thought, well, what is happening inside of me? Like, where is this shift coming from? And about that time, I remember my husband and I had a lot of long conversations. And, what would it look like if I left? What would I be giving up? What would be the pros of leaving and what would be the cons of leaving? And there was a lot of back and forth of that. There was a lot of prayer. There was a lot of work with a therapist because something inside of me was changing and I didn't know what. Like, why did the job that I strive so hard to get and I worked so hard for so many years, why did that job now not excite me and fulfill me any longer? And again, I had ran this race of perfection for many, many years in that job. And yes, was I myself on TV? Of course, but I fought so many inside battles of like having to look a certain way and having to, put on this facade of like, I can do motherhood really well and I can have a full-time job with crazy hours really well. And it was this constant chase and this need for that external validation that was really what I started to just chase. And as long as I got that, I felt like, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, right? Like that external validation from humans is what I would say is, oh, that's God. Keep going. That's me. I got to keep doing this. And it got to a point where in 2018, towards the end of that year, my contract was coming up for renewal. So it wasn't like I had to completely quit, break a contract. It was just, I knew the decision had to be made. And after literally a year of some self-work with a therapist, lot of praying. And I said, God really finally revealed to me what I was supposed to do, because I think he changes the desires of our hearts.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that he does, because if he wouldn't, we would stay in places that we aren't called to stay in anymore. And sometimes they're very detrimental to our life, not necessarily a job, but maybe it's a toxic relationship you're in, or maybe it's an addiction of some sort. And, we pray for God to shift our way and help us. And I think some of the best ways he does it is eventually the desires that we once had for something change. And when I really realized that those prompts and that change of emotion and the hardships I kept feeling, the heaviness of that job, God was changing how I viewed this career.
Yeah.
And he was making it easier for me to leave it, because at the time it was not that. I was giving up a lot. I was giving up a salary, of course. I was giving up, I hate to say this, right? But we're all like, you're giving up okay, you're not the girl on TV anymore.
Right.
And which I look back now and leaving all of that, he changed me in a way that never would have been, I never would have become, and I'm still becoming, right? I'm never going to have this I have arrived moment ever. I'm just looking forward to the next shift that he puts in my heart and changes in my heart, because I'll know that that's him. And so it became clear. It became clear that I needed to step away from that. There was a lot of closed doors. It was really easy in the beginning of that career to keep walking through open doors. And so the opportunities would come, the door would open. I'm like, okay, great. That's exactly what I'm supposed to do. But here I was in the position that was no longer going to change. I could do that job, probably another contract if they graciously offered me one, and maybe another one after that. But is that really what I want to do for the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah.
And I knew I didn't. I knew that I just didn't think that that's where I was going to find true satisfaction and true peace.
One of the main goals that I had when starting this podcast was to get into these kind of stories. The stories that might surprise people. I don't know when it became okay to portray a life of following Christ as a walk on easy street. It's just not. In John 16:33, Jesus himself said, "Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows." And I'm not just trying to harp on the negative. I just think that we do a watching world a terrible disservice when we attempt to portray a life of following Jesus as anything unlike what a non-believer goes through. We're all just people trying to make our way, and I would much rather navigate all of the highs and lows with Jesus than without him. I hope you have some time this week to take some personal inventory. Think about the really rough days and weeks. Maybe there were times that you thought you might not make it, and yet here you are. Thank God for that. Ponder the times when you were giddy with excitement about something. Think about the times that you laughed so hard that your sides hurt. Take a spin through the pictures on your phone and recall great times with family or friends. Thank God for all of that too. There was one more thing that Andrea shared back in May that is such a good way to approach a new year.
Here I am presented with this new chapter that I have no idea what it's going to look like, right? But I know God knows. God knows something that I don't know. And I can trust in that. Like, I am going to be a little scared. I am going to be a little fearful. But if I don't step forward, because every time we do that one sort of scary thing, and it doesn't have to be jumping out of an airplane, it doesn't have to be something big, magnetic, huge. Sometimes just the smallest step forward, small, scary steps forward at the end of our life add up to big, courageous, amazing things that we've done because God gave us the courage and bravery to do those things. I mean, and I think that the more I do those things, the more I feel like he's humbling me, because I don't do those things on my own. Because if I did that in my own strength, I would absolutely probably fail.
Yep.
And I would probably, I can't do that without him. And so, I was scared. I was scared because I didn't really know. I didn't have a plan, right? I literally left without a plan. But once again, man, we serve an amazing, awesome God that just has something worked up better than I could ever imagine. And some days I still feel like, what am I supposed to be doing today? I'm kind of feeling a little wandery. And then I get this quiet sort of calming whisper on my heart that says, just keep walking forward. And I do believe like he's there in front of us to guide us. I think he's next to us to encourage us. And I think he goes behind us to sort of push us and motivate us to keep going. And so whatever that looks like for each of us in our life, it's not going to be big, grand accomplishment. Sometimes I think it's sort of stripping down what society has built us up to become and stripping us back down to what he's always wanted us to be.
I think I need to repeat that list. God is in front of us to guide us. He is next to us to encourage us. And he's right behind us to push us to keep going. Producing this podcast for you has been an incredible joy for me this year, and that really makes me appreciate you for listening. God bless you, dear listener. Have a blast and be safe as we enter 2022. And I will catch you here next time in the Nook. The Nook Podcast is a production of Sozo Digital Media.